Chosen one, can you hear it? The air shifts around you as if heaven itself has paused for your attention. A question, ancient yet personal, echoes softly across the stillness of your soul. Can we talk tonight? It's not thunder this time, not the shaking of the earth, it's the whisper of a father longing to speak with his child. You feel it, don't you? That quiet pull inside, that sacred pause where time itself seems to bow. This is not random. This is divine orchestration. You are not here by accident. Every scroll, every delay, every hesitation has led to this moment. God says, I have been waiting for your yes, not your perfection, not your explanations, just your yes. You've spent so long trying to hold everything together that you forgot what it's like to simply be still and let heaven speak. Tonight, God doesn't want your strength. He wants your surrender. He wants to restore the conversation that silence tried to bury. The Spirit reminds us through the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 12. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. This is not a promise for someone else, it's for you. The one who wonders if their prayers still reach beyond the ceiling. The one who feels unseen in the crowd. God's response is simple, I hear you. Heaven is not deaf to your pain, and your whispers have not been wasted. Listen closely. Chosen one, the Father's heart is not angry. It's aching for connection. He's not calling to condemn, but to converse. You've been walking through days filled with noise, people talking, thoughts spinning but deep down. Your spirit has been longing for divine conversation. And now heaven is inviting you into it. God says, you've talked to everyone else about your worries, but not to me. Can we fix that tonight? This is not about ritual or rehearsed words. It's about intimacy. When your heart turns toward heaven and says, Lord, I'm listening, something shifts. You've carried questions no one could answer, pain no one could touch, but God has seen it all. Odd. He says, I've been beside you in every storm. I've been whispering peace in every restless night. But tonight, I need your full attention. Maybe you feel unworthy to approach him. Maybe shame has built a wall between you and his presence. But listen, grace has already torn that wall down. The same voice that spoke galaxies into being is calling your name, saying, come back into the light, come talk to me again. The creator of the universe is waiting not for a saint, but for a child willing to be real. The stillness of this moment is not empty, it's holy. You may not have fancy words, but God isn't impressed by eloquence, he's moved by honesty. Tell him what hurts. Tell him what confuses you. That's where healing begins. Every time you open your mouth to him, darkness loses a little more of its hold. Can you feel that warmth rising in your chest? That's the peace he promised, the kind that doesn't depend on circumstances. God says, you've been running in circles trying to fix what only I can heal. Stop striving. Sit with me. You were not made to carry burdens alone. You were made to carry my presence. There's a sacred rhythm in the kingdom. God speaks. You respond. You speak. He listens. That's how intimacy is restored. The Father doesn't shout over chaos. He whispers through peace. Tonight, silence everything else. Let his whisper become louder than your fear. If this word stirs something in you, make a small act of faith. Comment 727 below. It's your sign of surrender, your quiet way of saying, God, I'm ready for this conversation. And before you go, if this message touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe. Because what heaven begins tonight is only the beginning. You are being led into a dialogue that will transform how you live and how you hear God. The conversation has begun. Heaven is listening. And somewhere beyond time, your Father is smiling, whispering again. Can we talk tonight, chosen one? Let these words echo as you rest tonight. The same God who formed the stars is waiting for your whisper. When you open your heart, heaven bends close. Speak freely, for this night belongs to the ones who dare to answer his call. And when morning comes, remember this was not a dream. It was a divine conversation. Carry his voice into your day, into your choices, into every shadow that once felt heavy. God spoke tonight because your silence mattered to him. Now, keep walking with him. The silence after God's whisper lingers like a sacred echo, wrapping around your thoughts. You can still feel the weight of his question, gentle but undeniable. Can we talk tonight? It follows you, even in the quiet spaces between your breaths. Something inside you knows this moment carries more than emotion. It carries revelation. Heaven doesn't waste words, and when God calls for conversation, he intends transformation. You sit there, suspended between awe and uncertainty, realizing that this night isn't about asking for blessings or answers. It's about being known. God isn't coming to test you. He's coming to remind you that you are already chosen. The noise of the world fades, and what remains is his still voice, a voice that does not demand, but invites. A voice that says, I miss your voice. It's strange how you can be surrounded by people yet feel unseen. You've been carrying silent battles, smiling through pain, pretending you're fine while your soul aches for rest. But tonight, the presence of God feels closer than it has in a long time. It's not a feeling of fear, it's familiarity, deep recognition. The same voice that comforted Elijah in the cave now calls you out of hiding. The word of the Lord declares in the first book of Kings, chapter 19, verse 12, And after the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. That whisper is here again. It doesn't roar, it rests. It doesn't command, it comforts. It's not sent to frighten you, it's sent to remind you that even when life shakes, his voice remains steady. You remember the nights you prayed without words when tears became language. Those prayers were not ignored. Heaven collected every one of them. God never forgot the sound of your breaking. He waited for your heart to quiet long enough to hear his reply. I was there in the silence. I never left. You begin to understand that heaven's communication doesn't always come in thunder or vision. It often comes through ordinary moments when the noise fades just enough for you to listen. Sometimes through a verse that grips your spirit, sometimes through a stranger's kindness, sometimes through silence so deep it feels like language. That's how God speaks to his chosen ones, not always loudly, but always clearly. You realize now that God never stopped talking. You just stopped recognizing his tone. The world taught you to look for grand signs, but heaven speaks through gentleness. The creator of the universe doesn't compete for attention. He waits for surrender. You close your eyes and breathe. For the first time in a while, you're not trying to pray correctly, you're just being still. And in that stillness, words rise from your soul, I'm here. Lord, those 3 words unlock something powerful. The distance between you and God begins to collapse. You realize that divine conversation is not about eloquence. It's about honesty. He doesn't need your performance. He desires your presence. In the quiet, he responds not with condemnation, but with clarity. You sense him saying, I've been guiding you even when you doubted it. Every closed door, every delay, it all had purpose. I needed to prepare your heart before I revealed your next step. His voice carries peace that silences fear. There's something sacred about the way he speaks. It doesn't flatter, it awakens. His words don't just comfort, they rebuild. You understand now that divine dialogue isn't about talking to God, but with Him. It's a rhythm, a flow of love, truth, and transformation. He reminds you, "I never stopped choosing you." That single sentence unravels years of doubt. You've measured yourself by failure, but heaven measures you by purpose. God's choice of you was never about perfection, it was about destiny. And no mistake or rejection can undo that. You exhale, feeling something invisible lift from your shoulders. The weight of striving begins to fade. The conversation God asked for wasn't meant to burden you. It was meant to free you. He's not pulling something from you. He's breathing something into you. His presence isn't demanding, it's defining. You whisper again, this time softer. "Can we talk again tomorrow?" And though no words answer, peace floods your heart like a promise always. You sit in the quiet and it feels holy. The room hasn't changed, but the atmosphere has. It's lighter now, alive with presence. You realize that conversation with God was never meant to end with amen. It's meant to continue in every breath you take. And as you rest, you sense it again, that same gentle whisper from before. Not loud, not urgent, just steady, "I'll meet you in the morning." Heaven is not far away, it is settled near you, waiting for your next yes. The night grows still, and yet something within you begins to stir. You thought the conversation had ended, but heaven is not done speaking. God doesn't speak once and withdraw. He continues until your spirit awakens. You are beginning to understand that divine dialogue is not a single encounter. It's a lifestyle. Every breath, every quiet thought, every act of surrender is another word exchanged between you and the one who chose you. Your heart is more open now, more aware. You start noticing the gentle ways He moves, subtle, yet unmistakable. The peace that lingers after prayer. The way your thoughts feel lighter when you whisper His name. The way guilt loses its grip when you choose to listen instead of hide. God says, "This is what I've been waiting for, not your perfection, but your presence." It's in that realization that conviction and comfort meet. You see now that all those restless nights weren't wasted, they were preparation. Every unanswered prayer shaped your ear to recognize His whisper. Every silence was a setup for this sensitivity. Heaven trains its chosen ones not by volume, but by intimacy. The Spirit begins to speak again, not through thunder, but through the still. "Calm rhythm of peace, you've been talking to me, but now I need you to hear me." The words strike deep. Hearing God requires stillness, not striving. You can't recognize His voice if your heart is filled with the noise of fear or the echoes of old wounds. He says, "I'm teaching you to discern my tone, not the voice of shame, not the voice of doubt, but mine, which always brings peace even when it convicts." You realize now that much of what you called silence was not His absence, it was His patience. God doesn't shout to compete with chaos. He waits until you've quieted down enough to recognize His nearness. And when that awareness comes, you finally see He has been in the pauses, in the waiting, in the moments you thought you were alone. There is a holiness in the slow work of God. You're learning to rest instead of rush, to listen instead of explain, to obey instead of argue. Every step towards stillness is a step deeper into trust. You don't have to control outcomes anymore, you just need to keep the conversation alive. The Spirit reminds you that transformation always begins in conversation. Every great move of God starts with a whisper and a willing heart. He doesn't need crowds. He just needs one listener. You are that listener. That's why the enemy tried so hard to keep you distracted, because a listening soul is a dangerous weapon against darkness. Once you start hearing heaven clearly, you become unstoppable. You begin to feel gratitude well up, Not because everything has changed, but because you've changed. You're no longer afraid of the silence. You found God inside it. You're no longer desperate for signs. His peace is your confirmation. That's what divine maturity feels like, stillness that no storm can steal. And in this moment of reflection, heaven places a simple instruction on your heart, one that feels both gentle and powerful. Comment, speak. Lord, do it as an act of faith, not performance. You're not typing words for the sake of engagement, you're declaring availability. Speak. Lord, means you're ready to hear what he has been waiting to say. It's a prophetic response that echoes what Samuel once said in the night when God called his name. It's your way of saying, I'm not running anymore. I'm listening. When you type it, you're not responding to a video, you're answering heaven. And as you do, imagine the ripple effect, angels recording obedience, the atmosphere shifting, darkness retreating. Because when the chosen begin to respond, heaven begins to move. The peace returns, not as a passing feeling, but as a promise. You realize that you don't need fireworks to know God is near. His whisper is enough. You sit in the stillness, not demanding, not questioning, simply resting in the presence that now feels like home. God says, "You've heard me once, now prepare to hear me again. For those who keep their hearts open, I will make my voice unmistakable." You exhale, your soul steady, knowing that the conversation is not ending, it's deepening. You stay still a little longer, letting his nearness soak into every breath. The room feels different now, holy, alive. You realize listening is not passive, it's partnership with heaven's heartbeat. And when you whisper once more, "Speak, Lord," it's not ritual, it's revelation. You're saying, "I trust your timing. I welcome your truth." That simple phrase turns waiting into worship and silence into strength. The night stretches on, and peace rests quietly over you. There is no urgency in heaven's presence, only calm. The kind of calm that doesn't ask you to rush or fix anything, only to breathe. You can almost feel God's patience filling the room. He is not in a hurry. He never was. His timing doesn't demand, it invites. You are learning that divine communication is not a transaction, it's a slow unfolding of trust. Something within you is changing. You begin to understand that God's voice doesn't just come to you, it grows within you. Each whisper plants a seed. Every time you respond, that seed takes root deeper in your spirit. This is how revelation is born, not in noise or spectacle, but in the sacred stillness where your heart and heaven meet. You recall how often you mistook silence for distance. When you prayed and heard nothing, you assumed he was absent. But now, you see it differently. Silence was his way of teaching you to perceive. Just because God is quiet doesn't mean he is gone. Sometimes he steps back from your emotions so that your faith can step forward. He allows the stillness to deepen so that your listening becomes sharper. It is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 62, verse 5. "Yes, my soul, find rest in God, my hope comes from him." That's what this season feels like, rest disguised as waiting. You're learning that the purpose of pause isn't punishment, it's preparation. God pauses conversation not to end it, but to strengthen your ability to hear. The stillness begins to reveal truths you once overlooked. You start noticing how the world tries to fill silence with distraction. Every notification, every noise, every demand is designed to drown out the one voice that truly matters. But heaven's way is the opposite. God speaks most clearly when everything else goes quiet. You think about Elijah again, the man who sought God in fire and wind but only found him in the whisper. It's as if God is reminding you that his power isn't always wrapped in spectacle. The same voice that split the Red Sea can now slip into your thoughts with tenderness. That's the paradox of his presence, almighty yet intimate, vast yet close enough to rest upon your heartbeat. The more you listen, the more you realize the voice of God doesn't just inform, it transforms. It doesn't merely tell you what to do. It changes who you are as you listen. The very act of hearing him softens your heart, clears your vision, and steadies your steps. His words don't only instruct, they heal. There is healing happening now, though quietly. Memories that once felt heavy begin to lose their weight. Guilt that used to echo in your mind begins to fade. It's not because you forced yourself to forget, it's because his voice carries restoration. He speaks to remind you that forgiveness isn't a concept, it's a conversation. Every time he calls your name, shame loses ground. Every time you answer, grace expands its reach. You begin to see that listening is an act of love. It's your way of saying, God, you matter more than my thoughts. Listening is surrender disguised as stillness. It's worship without music, prayer without words. And as you stay in that posture, something begins to settle deep within you. Confidence, not in yourself, but in the one whose voice you're learning to recognize. Now, there's no need to strive for signs. You no longer beg for proof that God is near. His peace is evidence enough. Every quiet moment becomes communion. You are realizing that divine intimacy isn't about constant talking, it's about constant awareness. You don't need to chase his voice anymore. It's already echoing through the corridors of your soul. God's presence no longer feels distant, it feels woven into the rhythm of your breathing. You've stepped beyond asking and entered abiding. This is the mystery of divine dialogue. Once you learn to rest in it, it never really ends. You carry it with you into morning, into noise, into everything. And as the night begins to lift, you sense God smiling, not because you said the perfect prayer, but because you finally listened long enough to hear his heart. You sit quietly, realizing the lesson was never about words, but awareness. God was never far. He was teaching you to recognize his nearness in every ordinary breath you take. And as dawn begins to rise, light touches your face like a gentle confirmation. The conversation continues not through sound, but through presence. You now live within the voice of God. Morning arrives softly, not with noise, but with revelation. The world outside stirs awake, yet you move slower, aware that something eternal has shifted inside you. Last night was not just prayer, it was the rebirth of conversation between Creator and creation. You carry it quietly, like a secret flame that refuses to fade. Every inhale feels different now, every thought gentler. The whisper from heaven still echoes, wrapping itself around your heart like light woven through air. You realize now that this awareness, this peace is what people spend lifetimes chasing. It isn't found in striving or perfection, but in stillness. God has shown you that communication with him is not a rare event. It's a rhythm meant to continue through every ordinary moment. Every sunrise is a continuation of his voice saying, I'm still here. Every breath becomes a soft reminder that you are living in a conversation that never ends. There's a tenderness to this awakening. The way you think feels slower, clearer. You find yourself noticing details, the golden tint of light, the sound of morning wind, the pulse of your own heartbeat, and you realize they're all part of the same language. Creation itself speaks back to its maker, and now you are tuned to that frequency. God doesn't just talk through words, he talks through wonder. As you sit in the early quiet, the memory of his voice from the night before returns. I'll meet you in the morning. And he has kept that promise. You can feel his nearness even now, not demanding anything, just sharing space with you. It's in this quiet fellowship that you discover something profound. The more time you spend listening to God, the more you start to sound like Him. The Word of God declares in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 4, "Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine." Those words are no longer distant theology, they are reality. You understand now that intimacy with God is the root of everything fruitful. It's not what you do for Him that matters most, but what you allow Him to do in you. And yet, this realization doesn't make you retreat from the world, it makes you love it more deeply. You begin to see people differently, not as interruptions, but as extensions of God's heartbeat. You start recognizing brokenness as a call for compassion, anger as a cry for healing, and silence as a space where grace can enter. The same God who whispered to you in the night now invites you to carry that whisper into the noise of humanity. You no longer feel pressured to preach, to prove, to perform. The message of your life has become present, steady, kind, luminous. You've become a reflection of the voice that healed you. Every step, every act of kindness, every gentle word now speaks what your mouth doesn't need to say. God is near. And maybe that's how heaven evangelizes, not through force, but through fragrance. The fragrance of peace that cannot be faked. The fragrance of love that disarms fear. You are beginning to carry that aroma, quietly but powerfully, wherever you go. And now, as the sun rises fully, something inside you stirs a small but certain sense that this moment should not stay hidden. The message that changed you was never meant to remain private. It's meant to ripple outward, softly touching others who are still lost in their own noise. But this sharing is not an obligation, it's a beautiful offering. When you choose to share, you are not pressing a button, you are releasing light into another soul's night. It is the river carrying reflection from one heart to the next. And when you decide to think of it as lighting a small candle in agreement, saying, "Yes, I see this truth too." If your spirit longs to stay close to this voice, then subscribe not as obligation, but as planting roots by living water returning to the well where heaven speaks again and again. The choice is yours, and it is beautiful. There's no pressure, no demand, just the quiet awareness that what began in secret might now bloom beyond you. You're part of something sacred, the continuation of a conversation that is meant to reach countless hearts. You take one more deep breath and feel gratitude rise like morning light. The whisper hasn't faded, it's simply moved deeper, becoming part of your heartbeat. You realize now that listening to God will always lead you back to love, and love will always lead you to share. So you lift your gaze to the new day and whisper, "Let my life echo your voice." And heaven answers not in thunder, not in fire, but through peace that settles gently over everything. The day moves forward, yet something inside you still feels anchored in that quiet place from the night before. The world hums with its usual rush voices, screens, expectations, but none of it touches the calm you're carrying. You've stepped into a different rhythm now, a sacred tempo that the noise of the world can't rush. Every moment feels slower, deliberate, holy. The same peace that found you in the dark now walks beside you in daylight. You begin to realize how rare this stillness truly is. The world celebrates noise, but heaven celebrates awareness. Every time you pause to breathe, every time you turn your thoughts toward Him, the invisible becomes visible again. You remember that you were never designed to live disconnected from your source. God didn't just visit you last night. He has decided to remain. Throughout the day, you begin to sense Him in unexpected places, in laughter, in silence, in the ordinary rhythm of living. The presence that once felt distant now feels like a quiet companion. You find yourself whispering prayers you didn't plan, not out of duty, but out of love. This is what intimacy looks like, not dramatic encounters, but continual awareness. You stop chasing feelings and instead start recognizing patterns. On every gentle nudge, every moment of conviction, every sudden peace, it's all the same voice. The same one who whispered in the night is still guiding you through each decision. It's not about perfection, it's about partnership. You and heaven walking in sync. It is written in the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Those words feel alive now. Trust isn't surrendering control. It's resting in the certainty that you are guided by love. You begin to sense that God is teaching you a new form of obedience, not born from fear, but from intimacy. He doesn't want to force your will. He wants to shape it. And the more you listen, the easier it becomes to align with his heart. You no longer pray to be rescued, you pray to be refined. Then comes a gentle stirring inside. God isn't just calling you to listen anymore, he's calling you to respond. The conversation has reached a point where your participation matters. He says, I've spoken. Now I want to see your agreement. That's when you feel the prompting in your spirit, a simple act of acknowledgement, a way to seal this moment in faith. It isn't loud or dramatic, it's symbolic, prophetic, like writing your name on the promise. Comment 444. You're not typing a number, you're making a covenant in the unseen. The number 4444 carries the essence of divine alignment. Father, Son, and Spirit working as one. It represents order restored, foundation strengthened, destiny confirmed. When you place those digits, you're not engaging a trend, you're agreeing with heaven. Or you are saying, God, I step into alignment. My life, my will, my walk, let them move in rhythm with yours. And in that small motion, something sacred unfolds. Angels record obedience. The atmosphere adjusts, and heaven bears witness that you've chosen divine structure. What seems simple on the screen is mighty in the spirit. It's not performance, it's participation. The more you reflect, the more you understand hearing God is not a mystical privilege, it's your inheritance. When you listen, you participate in redemption itself. Every moment of awareness becomes holy ground. By the time evening comes, you are not the same person who woke up this morning. You carry peace like a garment light, invisible yet undeniable. The conversation with God is not seasonal, it's eternal. And while the world grows louder again, you have discovered a silence that cannot be stolen. You close your eyes for a moment and whisper, still speaking, still listening. And deep inside, heaven replies, always. You sit quietly, realizing that this new rhythm isn't temporary, it's transformation. Every breath feels like prayer. Every pause feels like worship. You are no longer chasing God, you are walking beside him. Evening settles, painting gold across your window. The light feels alive, as if heaven is smiling through the colors. You sense the whisper again, not with words, but with warmth. Stay near me, I am not done speaking. And so you nod in silence, letting peace rest where worry used to live. The night holds no fear now, only continuation. The conversation has no end, just deeper echoes of love, grace, and divine companionship. Night has fallen again, but this one feels different. It's quieter, softer, filled with something you can't quite name. There's a gentleness in the air, as if heaven itself is leaning closer. You are no longer waiting for God to arrive. You have learned that he never leaves. What once felt like absence now feels like atmosphere. You're beginning to live within his presence, not just visit it. The stars above seem brighter tonight, though they've always been there. You just see them differently now. That's what happens when peace changes your perception. Everything ordinary becomes sacred. The streetlight flickering outside, the hum of the world settling down, the sound of your own breathing, all of it reminds you of Him. You realize that every created thing is a reflection of the Creator's heartbeat. As you sit in the quiet, you sense something new stirring in your spirit. Not urgency, clarity. God isn't calling you to move faster, He's calling you to move deeper. The difference between the two is subtle but sacred. Fast movement seeks results. Deep movement seeks relationship. You've spent years trying to make progress, but now you understand that true progress is measured in closeness, not distance. You close your eyes and remember the voice from the night before, the same tender whisper that asked, "Can we talk tonight?" And once again, you feel that holy invitation. But this time, it isn't a question, it's a rhythm. God's voice is no longer a sound you wait to hear. It's a presence that moves through you. The Word of God reminds us through the prophet Isaiah, chapter 26, verse 3. You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you. Those words have become your lived reality. Perfect peace doesn't mean a perfect life. It means unshakable stillness even when everything around you trembles. You've begun to see that trust is not passive. It's an act of strength. It's choosing to stay still when fear tells you to run. You think about all the times you rushed into decisions, trying to fill silence with answers. You remember how often you tried to solve spiritual battles with logic. How you used to confuse movement for progress. But now, stillness feels powerful. It no longer feels like doing nothing. It feels like doing the most important thing of all, allowing God to speak before you act. There's a sweetness in this surrender. You start to understand why the psalmist said that God leads beside still waters. Still waters don't mean the absence of storms, they mean calm within them. You are becoming that calm. The chaos outside hasn't changed, but your spirit has. You've stopped reacting and started listening. That's maturity, the ability to hear heaven louder than the world. As you rest, memories of old wounds try to resurface. The enemy always tests peace, hoping to shake what's been restored. But this time, you don't fight the thoughts, you let them pass. You've learned that not every battle deserves your attention. Some storms only grow when you feed them with fear. You whisper, "I trust you, Lord," and just like that, peace steadies the air again. You realize how different this kind of strength is. It's not loud, it's not visible. It's quiet resilience, the kind that confuses darkness because it can't be provoked. You used to think spiritual warfare was shouting. Now you know it's standing. Standing in trust, standing in peace, standing in love when everything else says retreat. God's presence feels near again, but not as a visitor, more like a heartbeat. You sense Him reminding you, "You've learned to hear my voice in whispers, now I'll teach you to carry it in silence." Those words settle over you like a blanket. You understand that this next season isn't about hearing new things, it's about living what you've already heard. Revelation turns into rhythm. Obedience becomes instinct. The clock ticks softly in the background, but you're not counting minutes anymore. You're counting moments, holy moments that remind you heaven is still speaking. You think of how far you've come from confusion to clarity, from striving to stillness, from noise to knowing. The transformation wasn't loud, but it was complete. And as you sit there, breathing in the peace that can't be stolen, you realize this truth: the more you listen, the less you fear. Because the voice of God does not bring anxiety, it brings alignment. When your heart aligns with His, even the unknown feels safe. You open your eyes one last time before sleep. The room feels still, glowing faintly in the warmth of night. Nothing spectacular has happened, yet everything has changed. You are no longer waiting for God to speak. Your entire life has become the answer. The following morning greets you gently, like a continuation of the same song that played through the night. You wake before the world stirs, wrapped in a quiet awareness that peace has now become your language. There's no rush to move, no urge to check the clock. You've learned that time bends differently in the presence of God. It slows, stretches, and fills with meaning. What once felt like ordinary moments now shimmer with the weight of eternity. You lie still, eyes open to soft light spilling across the room. The same whisper that has followed you through every silence seems to speak again, not in words, but in warmth. It tells you that life doesn't begin when noise returns. It continues right here, in the hush before dawn. You've spent so much of your life chasing purpose, yet now you realize that purpose is not something to find, it's something to become. When you are aligned with the divine, even stillness becomes movement in heaven's eyes. You rise slowly, not wanting to break the atmosphere. Each small motion feels intentional, pulling the curtains aside, touching the cool floor, breathing in the new day. You sense that God is in all of it. This is no longer about trying to find Him. It's about seeing Him in the simplicity of existence. Every ordinary task is sacred ground when done with awareness. It is revealed in the book of Colossians, chapter 3, verse 17. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him. Those words settle into your mind like melody. You begin to understand that holiness is not confined to prayer. It breathes through daily life. Folding clothes, answering messages, walking to work, speaking with strangers, each becomes an altar when done in gratitude. As you move through your morning, you notice how easily peace can be tested. The world pulls hard, trying to reclaim your attention. The phone buzzes, the mind wanders, but something inside you has changed. Your spirit doesn't cling to distraction the way it used to. You no longer need to react to every sound or message. You've discovered that peace doesn't disappear. It waits for recognition. You whisper within yourself, "I'm still here." It's not a plea, it's a declaration. The same awareness that covered you at night now carries you through daylight. The stillness that once required silence has become strength that walks with you. That's how transformation works. It begins privately, but eventually breathes through everything you touch. As you go about your tasks, you start to notice people differently. The hurried stranger, the quiet child, the weary coworker, each carries fragments of heaven's design. You find compassion rising naturally, unforced. This is the fruit of stillness, love that doesn't need recognition to exist. You remember how God's whisper met you in silence, and now you want to be that whisper for others, a calm presence that reflects something beyond explanation. You realize that true spiritual maturity isn't about how loudly you can speak of God, but how clearly His peace speaks through you. The gentler your spirit becomes, the more powerful your witness grows. You no longer need to prove you're chosen. Your peace proves it for you. By midday, the light grows bright, and you feel it touch your face like affirmation. The rhythm of your breathing syncs with something divine. Every inhale feels like receiving, every exhale like release. You find yourself smiling without reason, because peace no longer depends on circumstances, it has become your home. Later, when afternoon shadows stretch long, you take a walk outside, The world is noisy again, but it doesn't shake your center. You watch leaves sway, hear laughter from a distance, feel the pulse of life moving around you. Every sound seems to remind you of that same divine presence. It is all connected, all holy. The path beneath your feet feels familiar yet new. You walk slower than usual, savoring the moment. It occurs to you that maybe this is what heaven intended all along, not escape from the world, but transformation within it. To live surrounded by chaos, yet untouched by it. To hear the storm, yet carry the calm. You return home with quiet gratitude. The day has been ordinary in every way, yet sacred in every detail. You understand now that peace isn't found, it's cultivated. It's not granted once it's chosen again and again. And every time you choose it, you choose Him. Night begins to fall and you whisper softly, "Thank you for teaching me to live awake." Somewhere unseen, heaven smiles. The conversation continues wordless, effortless, eternal. The evening sky unfolds like a living canvas, streaked with gold and violet as the sun quietly bows to the horizon. You stand at your window, watching day turn into dusk, and you realize how beautifully God orchestrates even the simplest transitions. The same hands that guided galaxies into motion are the same hands holding your story together. Nothing is random. Every moment has been divinely arranged, even the ones that once felt like silence. You take a slow breath. The air feels lighter now, cleaner. The kind of peace that follows obedience lingers in the room. You remember when you used to rush from moment to moment, desperate for meaning. Now you see that meaning was never hiding, it was waiting in the quiet spaces you used to overlook. God's presence has been the thread connecting everything. You think about how far you've come. There were seasons when you doubted you could ever hear His voice again. Nights when your prayers felt like they vanished into empty air. But now you know He was never silent, only subtle. His voice wasn't gone, it was gentle, waiting for your stillness to catch up to His rhythm. It is spoken in the book of Psalms, chapter 16, verse 8. I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With Him at my right hand, I will not be shaken. Those words echo inside you. You finally understand what it means to live unshaken, not because storms have stopped, but because your roots have gone deeper. You've learned that faith isn't found in fleeing fear, but in facing it with His presence beside you. As the sky deepens into twilight, you sense God drawing your heart into another kind of listening, one that doesn't require words at all. This is the stage of faith where conversation becomes communion. You don't always need to speak. Sometimes you just need to stay. Your very stillness becomes your worship. Your awareness becomes your prayer. And then, the whisper returns steady, clear, filled with weight and warmth. Now that you have heard me, help others to listen. You pause, feeling the gravity of that sentence. God is not asking you to shout His name from mountaintops. He's asking you to embody His peace in a way that others can recognize it without words. You're not called to argue about faith, you're called to live it quietly, so powerfully that hearts begin to hunger for what you carry. The world is filled with voices competing to be heard, but the voice that carries heaven's weight is always calm. It doesn't demand attention, it draws it. And that's what you've become, a living echo of the calm that once saved you. You are now the whisper to someone else's storm. You feel the weight of that calling, but it doesn't frighten you. It feels like purpose dressed in peace. You realize that every struggle, every unanswered prayer, every season of silence was training for this moment. You've been shaped not just to hear God, but to mirror Him. And now, as you stand in the quiet glow of twilight, a simple instruction rises in your spirit, a seal of what this season means. Comment, I remain. not as routine, but as revelation. I remain means you are no longer visiting peace, you are living in it. You're saying, God, no matter what comes, I stay anchored. I will not move away from your voice. It's not a promise to never falter. It's a declaration that even when you stumble, you'll fall forward toward him. Heaven hears that phrase as a vow. Angels mark it as endurance. You are not just surviving, you are remaining. Like a branch that stays connected to the vine, you draw life, clarity, and strength from his presence. That's what faith looks like when it matures. It doesn't need fireworks, it needs roots. The night grows quiet again, the stars awakening one by one. You sense heaven breathing with you, each inhale and exhale in rhythm. There is no separation now, no distance, just presence, just peace. And in that stillness, you understand remaining is not about holding on harder, it's about resting deeper. The conversation hasn't ended, it has simply found its eternal tempo. You linger there, eyes lifted to the night sky. Every star feels like a silent witness, shimmering with approval. I remain, you whisper again, letting the words become more than speech, they become belonging. And deep within, you sense what it truly means. To remain is not just endurance, it is intimacy. It means your faith no longer depends on feeling, it depends on trust. You stay because love has made its home in you. The night drifts toward its quietest hour. And yet inside you there is no heaviness, only warmth. You've come to love this stillness, not because it is empty, but because it is full. Each second feels thick with meaning, as though time itself has slowed to let heaven breathe through it. You realize something sacred. Peace is not the absence of sound, but the awareness of presence. You no longer chase moments like these. You live inside them. The world outside sleeps, but your soul is awake in the most peaceful way. You are no longer waiting for divine encounters, they happen with every breath you take. The same God who spoke through silence now speaks through rhythm. The gentle hum of the refrigerator, the distant wind pressing against the window, even the faint beat of your heart, all of it becomes worship. Creation isn't quiet tonight, it's singing softly. And you finally learned how to hear the melody. As you sit in the dim light, your thoughts return to all that's changed. You remember how desperate your prayers once were, filled with questions, aching for answers. Now, there is no begging, no fear. You have discovered that silence was not a punishment, but a preparation. The quiet taught you to recognize the gentle tone of God's voice, to trust the pauses as much as the promises. Every season of waiting, every unanswered moment was training your spirit to live tuned to his frequency. It is revealed in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 9. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. You pause over those words, letting them sink deeper. Remaining in his love isn't about staying perfect. It's about staying close. It's knowing that his affection does not waver when yours does. You've discovered that his love isn't fragile, it's constant, patient, fierce. It doesn't come and go with emotion. It abides. You take another deep breath. The air feels sacred, and in it, you sense an invitation, not a command, but a call to carry what you found into the lives of others. Peace is not meant to be hoarded, it's meant to flow like a river. Its beauty increases only when it moves. What has been given to you in stillness is meant to become movement, gentle ripples of hope sent outward. You begin to understand why Jesus spoke of being the light of the world. Light doesn't force itself, it simply shines. It doesn't compete with darkness, it dissolves it. That's what you're being asked to do, to let the calm you found become a quiet flame that reminds others there is still peace, still love, still God. Even the smallest things, the glow of a candle, curve of a cup, the shadow of your hand feel purposeful. Life has never been ordinary. You simply hadn't noticed how sacred simplicity could be. And now, as this realization blooms within you, you feel a soft urge in your heart, a desire to let this light move beyond you. When you choose to share, imagine yourself releasing a lantern into the night sky. It drifts higher, glowing softly, carrying light to someone who may have forgotten the stars. You're not spreading content, you're spreading calm. When you like, think of it as pressing your hand to a window pane, leaving a small print that says, "This piece reached me." Every gentle click becomes a ripple, a way of saying, "I see what heaven is doing." And I agree. And if your heart feels drawn to stay near this flow of presence, then subscribe as an act of return. It isn't a task, it's a testimony. Subscribing is like setting a stone at the riverbank, marking the place where you first heard the whisper and promising to return whenever your soul grows tired. There's no pressure here, only invitation, because sharing light, agreeing with peace, and staying near the source of truth are all natural extensions of what love does when it's real. You sit for a while longer, feeling the glow of understanding surround you. The God who asked to speak in the night has now made his home in your silence. You've discovered that true intimacy with heaven isn't found in striving, it's found in staying open. Before you let the night close its eyes, you whisper one last prayer. Let my life be the quiet light that leads someone else home. The room grows still again, but you can feel movement, heaven shifting gently, carrying your yes across eternity. And somewhere beyond what your eyes can see, another soul begins to stir, drawn toward the same whisper that first found you. The night folds into morning again, seamless and slow, as though time itself has learned to rest. You wake with that familiar peace resting over you, quiet but alive. The presence that once felt like a visitor has become part of your breathing. You no longer wonder where God is. You've begun to realize he has been here, within and around you, all along. You move through your morning with gentleness, each small act pouring water, opening a window, touching the light, becoming a form of prayer. The more you live in awareness, the more you see that holiness hides in ordinary things. You don't need to search for sacredness anymore. It reveals itself wherever gratitude lives. Even the sound of running water feels like a hymn now. It was once written in the Book of Lamentations, chapter 3, verses 22 and 23. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. You pause on those words, realizing how perfectly they fit this moment. His mercy renews itself not in grand gestures, but in subtle ones, the breath that still fills your lungs, the sunrise that keeps returning, the strength that keeps you standing. His faithfulness isn't loud, it's consistent. As the day unfolds, you sense that this peace isn't something you possess, it's something you participate in. It flows through you, not from you. The more you surrender, the more freely it moves. You've begun to understand that living in peace doesn't mean avoiding storms. It means carrying the calm that quiets them. The presence of God doesn't always change your surroundings. It changes how your soul responds to them. You notice how different your thoughts are now. Where there used to be fear, there's curiosity. Where anxiety once ruled, there's expectancy. It's as if your inner landscape has been rewired by grace. You don't need every answer, you just need assurance that you're not alone. And every time your heart wavers, though, that assurance returns like a tide, gentle, steady, undeniable. You step outside for a moment, letting the wind touch your face. It smells like renewal. The sound of trees shifting in the distance reminds you of how God speaks through creation without words, yet unmistakably. You remember the story of Elijah, how the Lord was not in the wind or fire, but in the gentle whisper, and you smile, realizing that same whisper has never stopped. The world moves quickly around you, cars rushing, people talking, life demanding attention, but you walk slower now. Not because you're detached, but because you're deliberate. You've learned that hurry drains awareness, and awareness is where presence lives. You no longer want to live on the surface of life. You want to live in its depth, where God's fingerprints are still wet upon everything. There's a beauty in the simplicity of your new rhythm. You no longer wake searching for signs, you wake expecting nearness. Every task, no matter how small, becomes a conversation. You sense that heaven doesn't divide the sacred and the ordinary the way people do. It's all worship when done with love. The line between prayer and living has blurred until they are one and the same. In the quiet of your heart, gratitude wells up again, not because everything is perfect, but because peace is. You finally understand that peace is not the reward of control. It's the fruit of surrender. You no longer ask, "Why me?" but instead, "What are you showing me?" That small shift in question has changed everything. It has turned struggle into classroom, delay into direction, silence into sanctuary. You begin to notice how every challenge now becomes a chance to hear God differently. In moments of confusion, His voice doesn't vanish, it refines. In seasons of waiting, His stillness becomes a mirror, showing you where faith truly lives. You've learned that divine growth doesn't always come through movement, it often comes through remaining. As the sun begins its slow descent, you feel full not of achievement, but of awareness. You're learning to live inside the flow of grace instead of outside it. You're no longer performing for heaven's approval, you're living from it. You close your eyes for a moment and whisper, "Thank you for staying even when I wander." The air feels different again, not heavy but holy. You've realized that heaven was never far. It was simply waiting for you to slow down enough to notice. The evening light spills across the floor, golden and soft, and you sit in it quietly. There are no visions, no words, just peace, and that is enough. For perhaps the greatest proof of hearing God is not what you feel, but who you become after hearing Him. The evening returns with the same tender calm, but this time, it feels deeper, heavier with wisdom, lighter with peace. You've lived through enough nights now to understand that every quiet hour is an invitation. God does not speak to hurry you. He speaks to hold you. And tonight, His presence feels closer than breath, softer than memory, stronger than fear. You sit by the window again, the one where so many of these moments began. The sky outside is dimming into indigo, clouds moving like slow rivers across a twilight sea. There's a hush in the air that feels sacred. You can almost sense heaven bending low, waiting for your stillness to answer. You realize that prayer is not always talking. Sometimes it's simply remaining open long enough for peace to land. You close your eyes, the world disappears, and in the quiet, the Spirit begins to speak again, not in sentences, but in impressions. Small waves of knowing. God reminds you of the path you've walked, the questions, the confusion, the constant search, and how even when you thought you were lost, you were being led. Every pause was protection. Every silence was strategy. Nothing was wasted. It is written in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Those words settle like sunlight in your spirit. You finally understand that God's timing was never about delay. It was about design. He was arranging things behind the curtain of the unseen, while teaching your heart to trust what your eyes couldn't yet perceive. You think of how much you've changed. Once you searched for signs to prove that heaven was real. Now, you simply breathe and know that it is. Faith used to feel like effort. Now it feels like oxygen. You don't strain to believe, you rest in it. God has become not just the destination, but the atmosphere you live in. You remember the question that started it all. Can we talk tonight? That invitation has become your life's rhythm. The conversation never ended, it only deepened. It taught you to listen differently, to hear love in correction, guidance in silence, and mercy in delay. You've learned that God's voice isn't always what you want to hear, but it's always what your soul needs. Tonight feels like another turning point. There's a quiet prompting in your heart, a gentle request from heaven asking for acknowledgement, not performance, not perfection, just recognition. Comment 111. This isn't a number you type by habit. It's a declaration of awareness. The number 111 is a divine symbol of oneness, awakening, and alignment. It represents the moment when heaven and earth meet in unity, when your heart, mind, and spirit move in harmony with God's purpose. When you type it, you are saying, Lord, I'm aware of your presence. I am awake to your guidance. I walk as one with your will, but you're not posting a digit, you're proclaiming connection. The one repeated 3 times echoes the Trinity itself, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in perfect unity. When you respond with 111, you are aligning your inner world with divine order. It's a statement that your distractions are falling silent, that your focus is being restored to the one who never stopped guiding you. The act may look small, but in the unseen, it carries weight. Each one represents agreement, your spirit agreeing with heaven, your will agreeing with peace, your steps agreeing with purpose. It's not ritual, it's resonance. Heaven hears that harmony and releases clarity in return. You pause for a moment and smile softly. You finally understand faith is not about constant asking, it's about consistent awareness. God was never waiting for perfect words, he was waiting for alignment. And alignment always begins with acknowledgement. The air feels warmer now. A quiet joy stirs inside you. Not loud or emotional, but deep and steady. You know this moment matters not because you've done something dramatic, but because you've done something real. You've said yes again to the God who keeps whispering peace into your nights. Outside, a single star glimmers brighter than the rest. It catches your eye. Like a divine signature written across the sky, you feel heaven saying, "This is the confirmation you asked for. My presence is constant, my guidance unbroken." You breathe slowly, letting gratitude take shape. Change no longer frightens you. The unknown no longer intimidates you. You've come to understand that the God who walks with you in silence is also the one who prepares you for new beginnings. And tonight, as stillness deepens and the world grows dim, you whisper, "I am one with you." The stars shimmer in quiet agreement. The number 111 has become more than a sign, it has become a truth, you and heaven, walking in unity, moving as one heart, one purpose, one love. The night deepens into stillness, but the quiet no longer feels heavy. It feels alive, like air just before dawn, full of promise and breath. You've grown so accustomed to this sacred rhythm that silence has become a language you understand. Every heartbeat feels like a verse, every inhale a prayer. You've discovered that the more you rest in His presence, the more your spirit begins to sound like His voice. You sit in the same place by the window, not because you have to, but because something within you longs to. It has become a meeting place, an altar not built with stone, but with surrender. You can almost sense God waiting there, not as a distant king, but as a familiar friend. There are no grand visions tonight, no thunderous revelations, only the calm awareness that heaven is near. The Word of God declares in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 23. Anyone who loves me will obey my teaching. My Father will love them, and we will come to them and make our home with them. You linger on the last phrase, make our home with them. The idea stirs something deep inside you. This is what all the stillness was preparing you for, not a fleeting visitation, but habitation. God doesn't just visit those he loves, he dwells within them. What was once conversation has become communion. You realize now that hearing God was never the goal, it was the gateway. His voice was the invitation, his presence is the destination. You no longer strain to hear words because you've begun to live inside the Word himself. The line between you and heaven has blurred, not because you've ascended, but because God has chosen to descend to inhabit your ordinary life with extraordinary peace. As the thought settles, you begin to feel memory rising, a reflection of all the moments that shaped this journey. The tears that watered your faith, the seasons when you didn't understand why heaven was quiet, the nights you begged for signs, all of them, you now see. We're building altars, markers along the road that led you here. And though the journey hasn't been easy, you no longer wish to erase a single step. Every trial taught you stillness. Every loss taught you awareness. Every unanswered prayer taught you dependence. You understand now that pain was not punishment, it was preparation. It carved space in your soul for a peace this deep to live. You whisper softly, "Thank you for trusting me with silence." The words surprise you. Once, silence terrified you. Now it feels like sacred trust. God doesn't stay quiet to distance himself. He stays quiet to deepen your discernment. You've learned to hear meaning even in the pauses, and that's where intimacy grows. You stand and walk slowly across the room, touching the small things you once overlooked: the cup on the table, the folded blanket, the candle flickering low. Everything feels different, as if heaven has infused it with significance. You realize that sacredness was never meant to be confined to temples, it was meant to be carried inside hearts that stay aware. Outside, the wind stirs through the trees, moving in rhythm with your thoughts. You remember how often you asked for a sign that God was near. Now, you no longer need confirmation, you are the sign. Your calm is the evidence. Your peace is the proof. You have become what you once sought, a vessel where heaven feels at home. It's not that you no longer feel human, you do. You still ache, still question, still grow. But now, you carry awareness like armor. You face uncertainty with stillness instead of fear. You've realized that holiness is not escaping humanity, it's embodying divinity within it. God doesn't remove your imperfections, he redeems them by dwelling inside them. As you look out the window one last time, the stars shimmer faintly, like watchful eyes. You realize this moment isn't the end of anything. It's the continuation of everything. The conversation that began as a whisper has turned into a way of life. You no longer wait for God to arrive because you've learned he never leaves. Peace settles over you once more, not as a passing feeling, but as identity. You don't need a new message tonight. You are living inside the message. You've become the echo of his voice, the living proof that silence speaks. Presence stays, and love always remains. You close your eyes, letting gratitude hum quietly through your chest. The night holds you gently, and for the first time, You understand you were never merely listening to God. You were becoming His silence. The first light of morning creeps gently across the horizon, brushing gold across your walls. You wake without alarm, without urgency, only the steady awareness that the same peace that guarded you through the night has followed you into the dawn. The air feels sacred, like the hush after a prayer has already been answered. You rise slowly, carrying with you the calm weight of revelation. This is what it means to live with God, not merely for Him. You move through your space in quiet reverence, noticing how everything seems touched by meaning now. The way the light folds across the floor, the soft hum of life beginning outside, it all feels orchestrated. You no longer separate the divine from the daily. You've come to understand that holiness doesn't demand distance, it requires awareness. Heaven doesn't only dwell in sacred places, it breathes through ordinary mornings like this one. You take a slow breath and realize that you haven't just learned to listen to God, you've learned to live in cadence with Him. His rhythm has become yours. There's no longer a battle between the spiritual and the natural, between waiting and moving, between faith and reason. Everything is harmony. What once felt like contrast now feels like completion. It is written in the book of Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, being confident of this, that He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Those words feel like a mirror now showing you what God has been doing all along. You see that His hand never left your life. Every silence was part of His craftsmanship, every unanswered question another thread in the tapestry. He has been weaving understanding into your being, one quiet conversation at a time. As you step outside, morning greets you with cool air and bird song. You tilt your head toward the sky and feel something in your chest shift. It's not awe in the old sense, it's recognition. The sky doesn't just declare His glory anymore, it reflects your own alignment. The same God who painted the heavens with light has inscribed peace across your heart. Creation and Creator are no longer distant realities, they are intertwined truths you now live inside. The path ahead of you feels familiar but transformed. You've walked it countless times, but now every step feels like participation in something holy. You walk slower, noticing details you used to ignore, the way sunlight glimmers on wet leaves, the faint scent of earth after night rain. You realize that these small things are not background, they are conversation. God is speaking through beauty, through rhythm, through life itself. As you walk, your thoughts drift back over the journey that brought you here. The pain, the questions, the waiting, they don't hurt anymore. They've become sacred landmarks, reminders of transformation. You see now that every breaking was birth, every silence was shaping, every moment of emptiness was God making room for fullness. The very things that once made you question His presence are now the proof of His involvement. You pause in closing your eyes and let gratitude rise like the morning itself. You no longer ask for signs because your whole life has become one. You are living evidence that grace works quietly, that peace grows slowly, and that divine timing is never late. You've stopped measuring spiritual progress in moments of excitement and started recognizing it in the consistency of calm. Somewhere within, you sense the Spirit whisper again, not as command, but as companionship. Walk with me in what's ahead. You know it isn't an ending, it's a continuation. This peace is not a resting point, it's the foundation for movement. You've learned that staying in God's presence doesn't mean standing still. It means carrying His stillness wherever you go. You keep walking, not rushing, not rehearsing, simply breathing. The world around you feels louder as the day wakes, but it can't touch the stillness within. You are no longer trying to protect peace. Peace has begun to protect you. It's no longer fragile, it's fortified. As you reach the end of the path, sunlight falls full on your face, warm and steady. You lift your eyes toward it and smile. It feels less like light and more like understanding. The same light that breaks the horizon every morning has broken something open in you. You realize the truth that has been quietly forming through every section of your story. God doesn't just speak in moments. He writes himself into your entire life. And as the wind moves gently through the trees, you whisper without hesitation, I am exactly where I am meant to be. The world keeps spinning. The day begins its rhythm, and heaven continues to hum through it, all unseen, unbroken, unmistakably near. Afternoon light spills softly through your window, golden and slow, as if even time has learned to move with reverence. You sit quietly, the rhythm of the world settling into something sacred again. Every breath feels like a conversation with God, a continuation of that first whisper that began so many nights ago. You've stopped chasing divine moments because you've realized that every moment, when noticed, becomes divine. You look around and smile. Nothing in the room has changed, yet everything feels alive. The walls, the light, the silence, all of it carries his fingerprint. This is what happens when awareness becomes worship. Life itself turns into prayer. You are not separate from the sacred anymore. You're swimming in it, breathing it, living it. Your thoughts drift back to the earliest days of this journey when you were unsure, desperate for signs, fearful that silence meant abandonment. Now you know better. Silence was his language before you learned to speak. Waiting was his classroom before you learned to trust. What once felt like isolation now feels like invitation. God wasn't distant. He was drawing closer in ways you couldn't yet recognize. The Word of God reminds us in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 14. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. You breathe those words in, letting their truth expand inside you. You realize this peace you found was never meant to stay contained. The same way a candle doesn't hoard its flame. You are meant to let your peace spill into other hearts. There's a gentle stirring within you now, not of urgency but of purpose. Heaven never demands, it invites. You feel that subtle tug asking you to share what you've received, not to preach, but to pass it on the way light passes from candle to candle, effortless, genuine, alive. When you choose to share, imagine yourself opening a window in a dim room. You're not forcing anything, you're letting light move freely, trusting that someone else will see it and remember they're not alone. When you comment, think of it as leaving a small stone beside a river. Each word, each phrase, is a marker that says, I was here. I felt his peace too. Comments become gentle ripples that prove the light has reached another heart. When you like this message, think of it as pressing your hand gently against a door frame where grace once entered. It's your way of saying, yes, I felt this too. Every act of acknowledgement becomes a ripple, a signal to heaven that you're awake and grateful. And if your heart longs to stay near this stream of reflection, then subscribe, not out of habit, but as a sacred return. Subscribing is a testament. It's saying, this voice leads me closer to stillness. Think of it as planting a tree by living water's roots deep, branches reaching. There's no pressure in any of it, only invitation. Love never forces, it flows. God doesn't measure your faith by how loud you act, but by how deeply you respond. Every gentle yes becomes another echo of obedience, another note in heaven's song. You lean back, letting that truth settle in your bones. The peace that once felt fragile now feels endless. You understand now that being the light of the world isn't about being seen. It's about being available for God to shine through. The room grows quiet as the day begins to dim. You whisper softly, "Use my peace as light for someone else." The words feel like release, like exhale. And though the world outside keeps moving, a new rhythm beats within you, a steady pulse of purpose. You are no longer a seeker standing in the dark. You are a lantern glowing quietly in it. The whisper returns, tender and sure, "Keep shining. I am with you." And you smile, because you finally understand you were never meant to keep the light. You were meant to become it. You sit a little longer, watching the light fade into a soft gray. The silence doesn't end the moment it extends it, carrying peace beyond time, beyond thought, beyond words. Somewhere within, gratitude rises again, not loud, not rushed, just steady. You realize this is worship without music, faith without noise, love without needing to be seen. And as darkness settles fully, you whisper a final prayer. "Keep my flame gentle, but never small." Heaven hears, and the stars respond, tiny mirrors of your quiet light. You stay still, feeling the echo of your own words linger in the air. It's then you realize your flame was never meant to end. It was meant to illuminate eternity's quiet edges. Night has returned once more, but it no longer feels like an ending. It feels like a resting breath between chapters, a pause in the rhythm of something eternal. You sit in your familiar place, the air soft around you, the kind of silence that feels alive. There is no distance now, no reaching, no strain, only presence, only peace. You notice how the world outside continues to spin in its rhythm. Cars pass. Voices echo faintly. The hum of life persists. Yet within you, there is a stillness that nothing external can shake. It's as if the conversation that began long ago has become a pulse that beats quietly beneath everything you do. You have become fluent in heaven's language, not through study, but through surrender. You think back to how this all began with a whisper, a simple question. "Can we talk tonight?" You had no idea then how much that single question would undo and rebuild you. You didn't know it would lead you here to a place where stillness feels like strength, where silence feels like sanctuary. What once felt like searching has become being. It is written in the book of Psalms, chapter 46, verse 10. "Be still, and know that I am God." You repeat those words slowly, as if they are the breath itself. Be still. No, it's not a demand, it's a doorway. God isn't commanding you to stop moving, He's inviting you to recognize that He's already here. Stillness isn't inactivity, it's awareness. It's choosing to dwell in the knowing rather than the noise. You realize now that peace isn't something that visits occasionally, it's the foundation of your being when you remember who holds your soul. Every time your mind starts to wander, every time your heart begins to race, His presence pulls you back like the tide returning to shore. It's gentle, patient, relentless in love. You've come to understand something sacred about this journey. God doesn't want your perfection. He wants your presence. He doesn't require eloquence. He asks for honesty. The more honest you've become, the closer He has felt. The walls you once built for protection have become altars for worship. The fears that once isolated you have become testimonies of grace. You glance toward the candle flickering nearby. Its small flame trembles but doesn't falter. You smile, realizing how much that image mirrors your faith. It's not loud, not unshakable in appearance, but consistent. That's what real faith looks like: enduring glow, not dramatic fire. It doesn't boast, it simply burns. Every season of silence, every long night, Every unanswered question, they were not wasted. They taught you to see without sight, to listen without sound, to love without condition. The same stillness that once unnerved you has become your greatest strength. You no longer crave constant affirmation. You live from inner assurance. You stand, walking to the window. The night outside glimmers softly, the sky painted in deep indigo and scattered stars. You feel small beneath it, but not insignificant. There's comfort in knowing that the same hands that hold the cosmos also cradle your life. You are part of a divine symmetry, each breath, each thought, each moment intricately known and counted. You whisper a quiet thank you, not for things, but for transformation. For the journey from chaos to calm, from striving to resting. Gratitude flows easily now, unforced, because you finally understand that God's presence was never about where you met Him, but how you recognized Him. The candle flickers lower. Its glow fills the room with soft gold, and the shadows it casts seem to dance with meaning. You sit again, allowing your thoughts to drift like slow rivers. You no longer fear tomorrow because you've learned that peace is not tied to predictability, it's anchored in trust. You think about the days to come and realize they don't intimidate you. Whether filled with laughter or with loss, you know God's voice will still thread through them. His guidance may not always arrive as a word, it might come as quiet strength, a sense of direction, or the unexplainable peace that tells you you're exactly where you should be. And so you rest in that truth, letting it hold you the way light holds everything it touches. You no longer ask for signs, for miracles, or for clarity. You ask only to remain aware, because awareness is where heaven lives in every heartbeat that whispers, I am here. The night settles deeper, but you are unafraid. The whisper that once called you now rests inside you. You are not waiting for God to speak. You are living proof that He already has. Dawn breaks once more, slow and tender, spilling light across the horizon like grace made visible. The world seems to stretch awake beneath it, and you rise with a quiet knowing that this light is not new. It's the same light that has been guiding you all along. Each sunrise feels less like a beginning and more like a continuation, a steady reminder that the conversation between heaven and your heart has no end. You move through the morning without rush. The stillness that shaped you in the night now walks beside you in the day. There's a soft rhythm to everything you're breathing, your steps, even the way your thoughts unfold. Nothing feels forced anymore. Peace has become your natural posture, and gratitude your native language. The silence that once unnerved you now feels like home. You pour a cup of water and watch the surface ripple slightly, the sunlight catching it just right. Even that small motion reminds you of something divine. The spirit moves like this, subtle, unseen, but undeniably real. You no longer need great signs to recognize God's presence. You've learned to see Him in the smallest reflections, to sense Him in moments too gentle for words. It is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 15. In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. You whisper the verse softly, letting it become prayer. Quietness and trust. You understand now that strength was never about control, it was about surrender. The more you release, the more grounded you become. The world taught you to prove yourself through effort. Heaven has taught you to reveal yourself through stillness. You glance outside as morning deepens. The sky glows pale gold, clouds drifting like silent witnesses. Everything feels interconnected, alive with unseen purpose. The same rhythm that pulses through nature pulses through you. You are no longer observing peace, you are participating in it. You've stopped trying to separate the spiritual from the ordinary. because now you see they were never apart. You think of all the times you questioned whether you were hearing right, whether silence meant distance, whether waiting meant denial. And now you smile, because hindsight has turned confusion into clarity. God was never withholding, He was weaving. Every quiet season carried His fingerprint. Every delay carried His intention. Every unanswered prayer was answered in a language your soul needed time to learn. The candle from the night before has burned low, its flame small but steady. You stare at it for a moment, recognizing yourself in that light. Not bright enough to dazzle, but strong enough to remain. You finally understand that being chosen was never about status. It was about surrender. God never asked you to shine alone. He asked you to let His flame live within you. You walk outside, the earth still cool beneath your feet. The air tastes like promise, crisp and full of life. A bird sings nearby, its song simple yet certain. You close your eyes and listen. The melody doesn't ask to be noticed. It simply exists, confident in its place within creation. That's how your soul feels now. You no longer strive to be significant, you rest in being seen. The breeze touches your face, and you whisper, "You're still here." It's not a question. It's recognition. The same God who spoke to prophets and poets is the same one speaking quietly through your spirit. The same presence that hovered over waters now hovers over you. It's not a visitation, it's habitation. Heaven has found a home in your awareness. You linger in that truth, feeling its weight and wonder. The world may never understand this kind of peace, but you don't need it to. What you found isn't meant to be explained. It's meant to be experienced. The divine doesn't require applause, it only asks for attention, and you've learned to give it freely. As sunlight spills fully into the day, you feel the old questions fade, replaced by a single certainty: God doesn't stop speaking. His voice weaves through every heartbeat, every thought, every pause. The conversation never ends. It simply shifts forms. You don't need visions or thunder anymore. Awareness is enough. You turn back toward your home, light filling the doorway. For a moment, it feels as though heaven and earth have overlapped. No veil, no distance, only presence. You step through that light and smile, knowing this isn't a conclusion, but a continuation. The whisper remains, eternal and intimate, shaping your every breath. I am with you. And as you move forward into the day, peace walks beside you like an old friend, steady, radiant, and true. You no longer wait for divine moments. You have become one. You sit once more in the stillness that began it all. The whisper of God now flowing through everything: your breath, your steps, your words. The journey that started with one question, "Can we talk tonight?" has become the rhythm of your entire life. You no longer wait for sacred moments. You live as one. Peace has become your language, and awareness your prayer. You look back over everything you've walked through: the silence, the lessons, the nights of wondering, and realize that none of it was random. Every pause was placement. Every ache was shaping. Every quiet space was heaven preparing a home inside you. And now, that home glows quietly, steady and unshaken. As you reflect, a gentle truth rises in your heart: peace was never meant to be hidden. What was poured into you in stillness is meant to move through you. Love never stays contained. It travels, it touches, it heals. And so you let it flow softly, freely, beautifully. When you choose to share, it's not obligation, it's overflow. Picture yourself releasing a lantern into the evening sky, trusting its light to reach someone lost in their own night. When you comment, imagine your words as ripples across still water, Each one carries your gratitude, marking the place where heaven touched your heart. When you like, see it as a silent amen, a small echo that says, "This piece found me too." And when you subscribe, let it be your quiet promise to return to the well whenever your spirit thirsts again. You're not just following a message, you're staying close to the presence that speaks through it. The light around you softens, but your spirit glows brighter. You've become what this message was always about, not a seeker waiting to hear from God, but a chosen one who carries his whisper into the world. And as the final stillness settles, you smile, knowing the conversation never ends. It simply lives through you.